Good morning. Today, Today I wanted to talk to you very briefly about some of the very neat tools. I would call them neat because I'm all about education and how we can get students really involved. And so something came across my desk the other day. It was about Roblox, and it was about some LGBTQIA students who had concerns because they wanted to know um, if I could help them write what they were thinking was a Freedom of Information Act request, which is not. I'll explain why in a minute. But when they told me what was going on, I became very concerned. So I have written a letter of advocacy. Feel free to sign that, use it, copy it, duplicate it, whatever you'd like to do with it. It just asked for algorithmic accountability, which led me to explain to them what FOIA means, Freedom of Information Act requests, right? So that is information that the government keeps on different things, and then you have the freedom to ask for that information because you are a racist. Yeah, because it's the government. We all own the government, more or less. And so that is one element of it. But when you want to write, and as you know, I always encourage all of my students, regardless of your age, to advocate for yourself. Self-advocacy is huge, right? Doesn't matter if you're whatever community you identify with. If you have a concern, I always say advocate, right? And I kind of started this whole little campaign called "The pen is mightier than the sword," meaning that if you have a question, if you have a concern, especially with all of the social change that is going on right now, which is amazing, that you assert your position. Like whether that's, hey, I want to know the data on this. Well, I was driving and this happened, and I would like to know how many officers were patrolled in this area right here. Anything like that, I think that's a great use of not only education, right? Because you're writing a letter, and so for teachers, students are writing a letter, or for parents, students are writing a letter. They're asserting their position and they're working on their metacognition. You know how much I love writing, right? I think it's a great way for all students to practice all of their academic skills. So with that in mind, you're also now starting to draft an argument, and you're looking for information. And so that might even lead to maybe even some math, right? Yeah, I've got feelings on math, but I'm working on those. So what I would do is then I would have that go over to some of my more mathy friends, my data friends, and then I would ask them. So what that can do is it can be great for, as we talk about, I'm not going to say, it's called fake news. I'm going to call it propaganda, and propaganda's been around forever, right? So as a teacher, as a coach, as a consultant, as a policymaker, as anyone, as a parent, as a school, as a district, whoever you are, you have to teach these students that are coming up. We have to teach them how to find the truth, because a lot of the news is just, there's narratives on one way, there's narratives on the other way, and so like the Three Little Pigs. I mean, you could read about Three Little Pigs, and then you could read about the big bad wolf and how he's you can read, it's like, oh boy, what is it? I should have looked it up. Anyway, it's the Three Little Pigs version from the big bad wolf. And it's always good, always good to look at things from different perspectives. So a lot of times if you look at my articles, that's why I have like a zillion sources, because I really want to try my best to encompass like the whole spectrum of the argument. And I always talk about this with students, is that you always want to embrace the opposition and then you destroy it. But first you have to embrace the opposition. You have to acknowledge it. You have to be like, yeah, this is what they're saying, and here's the data why, right? So with that in mind, so we just talked about like how you can find some facts and fact checking, and this is what I've talked to my daughter about ad nauseum, which she is amazing at now, is finding the original source. So in an article, usually if they're quoting a study, then click on the study and then go to that and then go to that and keep going down that rabbit hole, right? You want to get to as much information as you can. Now, one educator on here, I can't remember who it was, said if it's not 3, let it be. So that's a good one. That's really good, right? So I'm going to teach you today, I'm going to go through a congressional site that's going to give you a little bit more information. And this links back to what I just talked about before, because as we talked about Freedom of Information Act is for government information, as these students brought these concerns to me, this is much more, it's more than just Freedom of Information Act. What this actually talks to or speaks of is algorithmic accountability. And there is, I know, right? There is an act that was, a bill that was put forward April of 2019. It's called the Algorithmic Accountability Act. And it was by the House. And nothing's happened on it right now, which is pretty much, it takes a long time. And we need to push, if we want this to go forward, we need to push this forward. One of the things that I did mention was, and which is very relevant today, right, is that Amazon had to stop their own, so they had their own AI that was doing their hiring, and they built this, and then they realized that all the data they put into it was biased, and so they were getting all these biased outcomes, right? And it was very interesting because no one told them to take it down. They took it down. So I give Amazon credit for that, right? Then there's other ones about Facebook, and you know my feelings on Facebook. And there are other examples in there. I can't exactly recall, but this was an insurance. Originally, I found the bill in an insurance article, and then I just followed all of the sources and kept going. And then I added, so all of my threads I put in there. And there's really interesting things. If you're following anything with I'm gonna call it the defund the police. That collective movement, and I'm doing that not because I do not agree with it, because I 100% agree with it, but it's a little bit of a misnomer because, and I'm actually writing about this now to explain why and how school resource officers even got into schools. And I'm only speaking on schools because that is my area of expertise-ish, right, is education, being in it for 25 years. So because of that, because of the school to prison pipeline, because of all the research that's coming out, because of the Gun-Free Act, and then we have U.S. versus Lopez. Yeah, U.S. versus Lopez, where they found that act, that zero tolerance was unconstitutional. Well, it was not. It was unconstitutional because it was a state law. Oh, and they were trying to tie it to interstate commerce. So the law that they created, the Gun-Free Act, in like 1994, I think, that became unconstitutional, and then they just went back and redrafted it. And there's a whole other video on that, and that talks about law and policy and my favorite topics, right? So because of that, right, there are these very, very big issues. And if we could teach people how to get more information or how to get the exact information, there are so many great sources out there. Some of them are like databases. I just saw another one, database on police brutality. And so when I say defund the police, I'm not saying, and I don't think anyone is really. I think that this is just, it's because you just want something very simple so that people get it. But it's about oversight. It's about oversight. And please tell me any career that doesn't have an element of oversight. I taught in Wisconsin. That was the last time I taught. That's where I was licensed. And Wisconsin Union, WI Union, was the whole movement where they took the unions away from the teachers. And there was a big outcry of that. And it wasn't per se about what everyone made it think everyone thought it was about. It was much more about your ability for me, it was about my ability in a meeting to be able to say to parents, hey, we've got a problem, we've got to fix this. And for them not to come back at me and be like, you get your summers off, I don't want to talk to you, right? Now for education, of course, it was tied to, it was always tied to money and your 401, well, it's not your 401, maybe it's your 401, I can't remember. Whatever, your pension, that's it. The pension and health insurance. And there, I wrote all about this. So, I mean, in a nutshell, all that means is that a long time ago, when they decided that, oh, we want teachers to all have their master's degree, right? But we don't want to pay them anymore because we're poor districts and we can't afford that. In Wisconsin, what happened was there was a QEO, which is Qualified Economic Offer. And I'm kind of glazing over a lot of this. There's a lot of nuance here. But what they basically said was like, we're not giving you any more money, but we'll give you health insurance. But this is before health insurance was a commodity, right? So then, health insurance costs broke. This is before the ACA, broke the QEO, and it was just a mess. And a lot of people did not understand why teachers had the insurance that they did, and the reason was because it was in lieu of like $10,000 or $15,000 bump that you would get if you had your master's degree in any other field. Okay, so all that aside, because you've got these pendulum swings, blah 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 blah. Okay, so I've rambled on about that. So that happened, and I understand that dynamic, and I get what happened. But now we have this other dynamic, and this dynamic is really concerning to me because I advocate for students who might be getting expelled, might be getting suspended. I've never done one where they're gotten arrested. I'm not a lawyer. I education policy. I have a master's in education, and I'm almost finished with my M-Law. Pretty cool. But anyway, so a lot of special education needs, accommodations. I help parents understand the words that educators are using because just like any field, they try to be esoteric and then make it difficult for parents to understand what their rights are. And so, I just go, I listen, I give my opinion if they want me to. I talk to the parents ahead of time and I'm like, what do you want out of this? Talk to the students, what do you want out of this? Okay, how can we all work together within the confines? What do you need? The district doesn't have money. Okay, do I know grants? Can I write a grant? Do I know this? Do I know? What connections could I offer? What resources? Because it's just like an all hands on deck thing, right? So anyway, that's how I...